Hi, so I'm going to do a chocolate cake today, and I'm going to try and recreate the cake that I made for somebody's birthday, Jasmine's birthday, a couple of weeks ago. So it's a pure chocolate cake with chocolate buttercream, chocolate ganache and loads of chocolate bits and pieces on top. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to double the quantities. So the quantities that I'll give you are for a decent sized cake, so you can cut that in half, put buttercream in the middle, decorate it. I want to do 4 tiers on my cake, so I'm basically making 2 separate cakes, but I'm actually going to split the mixture into 4 tins rather than just cut it in the middle. So I've got 4 of these tins, the loose bottom tins, and I've greased and lined them earlier on. So the mixture calls for 175 grams of self-raising flour. So I'm doubling that up because I want to do 4 tiers. So I'm measuring out 350 grams. 350, that's great. And then 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. Okay, so heaped teaspoons are going in. Teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda. So I've not got that out. So it says a teaspoon, so I need 2 teaspoons. Oh yeah, and I'm doubling the quantities of cocoa powder as well, aren't I? So I need 2 more of those. Alright. I'll put all the ingredients for the recipe in the single quantities above the video so that you know exactly what you're doing. 150 grams of caster sugar, so I need 300, and I haven't got any caster sugar, so I'm having to improvise. Can't get hold of caster sugar anywhere for love nor money, but I did manage to get hold of some soft brown sugar the other day, so I'm just going to use that. Let me just sieve that in there. Adding 300 grams of sugar, 150 grams if you're just doing 1 cake and splitting it in half. But like I said, I'm doubling the quantities on mine because I want a big tiered cake. More potential for it to go wrong. Right, that's 300. So that's okay. And then I'm going to add the wet ingredients now. So to make sure this cake is nice and fudgy, I'm going to use syrup. So there we go. Right. So it says 2 tablespoons of golden syrup. So I'm doubling that quantity. So I need 4. Okay, so that's 4 of those gone in there. 2 large eggs for your standard cake, 4 for me. Right, and you'll notice that there's no butter on the recipe, because quite often I use oil in sponge recipes just to make it a lot lighter and more moist. I know it seems like adding oil doesn't sound like the best thing to do to make a really light cake, but it is. So the recipe for this says 150 millilitres of oil, so vegetable oil. I wouldn't use olive oil because it tastes, the taste is too strong. Can use sunflower oil at a pinch, but vegetable oil just doesn't taste of anything really. So that's going in there. And 150 mils of milk. So get that on a second. And that's for, again, 150 mils of each is for the single cake, so I'm doubling up with 300. like I say, for those of you that just want the recipe for the single cake, that's what I'll be posting at the top of the post. So I'll just mix all of this in, and then I'll beat it all together with the beaters. If I do it whilst it's not mixed in, the flour will go absolutely everywhere because I'm not using a processor today. Let me check my notes. Yeah, I think that's it. Eggs, sunflower oil, milk, golden syrup, caster sugar, bicarbonate soda, cocoa powder and self-raising flour. So, and then just give that a really good blend. Put it in the oven on 180 for about 25-30 minutes. And I'm only going to bake the 2 tins at a time. If you are using 1 tin, then it will need a lot longer. I will put it in for 35 minutes and then check it with a skewer. If you can see that the mixture is still, you know, just when you look through the oven door, if you can see that the mixture is still fairly liquidy, then just keep checking on it every 5 minutes. But when it looks done, put the skewer in the middle of the cake just to check if you're doing just 1 cake and then cutting it in half when it's finished. I'm doing 4 little cakes, so, and this recipe does call for doing them in 2 separate tins, so I think that if you're using 2 separate tins, 25 to 30 minutes per batch is plenty of time. Right, that's my mixture all mixed up. So I'm going to try and evenly pour these into the cases, and I'm not that bothered about getting it exactly right so that there's the same amount of mixture in each one, as long as I check them with a skewer. I'm fairly confident that they'll bake. I'm sorry, I should have showed you that right from the, so that you're looking at that sort of consistency. Let me see if I can get my scraper out. And I've just been licking my fingers, as you do. Right. Yeah, I'm happy with those. I'll check on them after 20 minutes, and if they look done, then I'll stick a skewer in. But like I say, I'm only baking 2 at a time. Put that one in there. In there. And I'll come back to those later. Time has just gone off and they've been in for 20 minutes. So I'm just going to get out and do the skewer test. Give me a second. Right. So, and that's perfectly clean right out of the middle. So that one's done. Just take the other one out. I think the other one wasn't as big as that one. They've got a nice rise to them. Yeah, perfectly clean. So I'm going to pop these 2 in now. And they were in for just 20 minutes each. But like I say, if you've got a cake and you're doing it in 1 and then cutting it in half when it's baked, it'll need to be in for longer, otherwise the centre won't be cooked. I would try 30 minutes and then check it, and then just keep doing it every 5 minutes until the skewer comes out clean like that. If it comes out and there's bits on the end, then it's obviously not done. Okay. Morning. So it's another day today. I've cooked the chocolate cake and left them to cool, and then it just got too late in the day when I was doing other things. I've put them in Tupperware, 2 different Tupperware separated with some baking paper. We're just going to make the buttercream and the ganache now to be able to decorate them with. So first of all, the buttercream. So what you want to do is I'll give you the recipe again for a single cake. So it'll be enough to put in between the layers and to decorate the top as well. But if you want to use a ganache to decorate the top, which is what I'm going to do, you can always use this to decorate or freeze it for another day. It freezes really well, or you can put it in the fridge and you can use it for something else. You can use it to decorate the tops of cupcakes, or just halve the recipe. Whatever you do, you start with the dark chocolate, and I'm using proper chocolate. I'm not using cocoa powder, I'm just using proper chocolate. So start with the chocolate, then double the amount of butter that you need, then double the amount of icing sugar. So this recipe is for 50 grams of dark chocolate, 100 grams of butter and 200 grams of icing sugar. I'm going to use 100 grams of chocolate, 200 grams of butter and 400 grams of icing sugar. So hope that makes sense, because I've got 3 layers, and then I want to use it for a little bit of decoration on top. And there was some left last time as well. So if I was doing it a little bit thinner, I could probably get away with, I don't know, 3/4 of the quantities, but I'm not messing about like that really. It's just too complicated for me. So I'm in the process of melting 100 grams of chocolate. You can either do that in a bowl, in a pan over boiling water. Make sure you don't let the water touch the bottom of the bowl, or you can do it in a microwave. I've melted this in the microwave. Because the microwave, it's taken me about 40 seconds to melt 100 grams of chocolate. I put it on, a bit more than 40 seconds I would have said. I put it on for 30 seconds initially, and it still looked very much in chunks, and there was just a little bit of melted dark chocolate in the middle. So I gave it a stir. I put it back in for another 20 seconds, and I brought it out, and I wanted to show you that it still had some lumps in it, quite big lumps actually, but I've let it sit here for a minute, and because it's continued to cook from the microwave, it's melted all of those lumps, so it's now just a smooth chocolate. So that's done basically, so 50 seconds. I would really only do it in 20-second increment, like I said, and that was for 100 grams, so 50 grams you possibly, even less. Just do it initially for 20 seconds and then just 10 seconds each time until you're left with some lumps, and then just leave it, because like I said, it carries on cooking and the chocolate will melt. Then 100 grams of butter for you. I need 200. So bring it to room temperature. This has been left out overnight. I've had to get a new pair of scales because my other ones conked out on me. So that's just 100. So I need double that quantity. So I'm just going to take another little bit off here. See what that's got. 184. 200 exactly. I can't believe it. And then it needs to be whipped. So I'm just going to put it in the right, so now 200 grams of icing sugar for you. So, but I'm going to measure out 400 for me because I'm doubling the quantities. So I'm going to put it in little bits at a time. So that's 200 grams. I'm just going to add that in, and then I'm going to try and stir it around I'm only going to add a couple of spoons of that. Stir it around before I start beating it because it'll just get all over the place otherwise. So try and stir that around. All right, Dad. Without getting it everywhere. I have got this little handy little thing on top, but it does come out of there. So the more I can incorporate it into the butter when it first goes in, the less it's going to go flying around. So let's try that. Right, so for the ganache. So the chocolate ganache is basically a spreadable chocolate cream that it will go harder, and it just tastes, well, it just tastes like gorgeous chocolate really, but it's basically chocolate cream and sugar. So yeah, no calories in lockdown, that's what we're saying. So to cover the cake, this is what worked for me last time. So 300 mils of double cream, so that's exactly 300 mils double cream, and that goes into a saucepan. So let me just get a spoon, drip, because I want every last bit of double cream in there. Right, and then we want the 2 tablespoons of golden caster sugar. So I've got light brown sugar. If you haven't got caster sugar, granulated sugar will do. Just means it melts a bit quicker, that's all. So 2 tablespoons of that going in there. A little bit more for good measure. And then you want to heat this gently on a stove, on a hob, until it just about bubbles. You don't want it boiling, you don't want the cream boiling. In the meantime, put 200 grams of chopped chocolate, dark chocolate, in a bowl just at the side, because as soon as the cream is heated up, you're going to pour the dark chocolate in with the cream, and that will melt the chocolate, and just keep stirring it as you're doing it. So I'm just going to get that ready now. So that's 100 grams. And you've got your cream and sugar. So I'm going to melt that on the hob and I'll come back to you and then we'll stir in the chocolate. I'm just going to put this in a bowl and come back to you. All right. I hope that previous video works, because if it hasn't, I'm going to have to do all this again. Oh. Decorating the chocolate cake, which is the best bit for me. Yay! Right. So I've done my buttercream and I've done the chocolate ganache. The buttercream's nice and soft. The chocolate ganache has been in the fridge for an hour or two and it's properly solid. You remember before it was quite liquidy and now it's properly solid. So that's fine. It's like butter. I can just stir that around and it will be of a decent consistency. It's still quite cold, so I'm just going to leave that out on the side while I get the bits of the chocolate cake. So these were the chocolate cake layers that I baked yesterday, and I've just separated them with greaseproof paper. I've been to the supermarket and I've got myself a sandwich board. This is just a really thin one. It fits inside the Tupperware things quite well. I've got myself a cake box as well, and if you've only got a Tupperware, you can cut the cake into slices and just put them separately in the Tupperware dish. So I'm just going to try and get this cellophane wrapper off this cake board, because I'm just going to put it on this and then it'll be easier to decorate. I've got a Lazy Susan as well, so I'm just going to put this on top of the Lazy Susan, and then I can use it as a turntable to decorate round. So first layer, chocolate cake goes on there. So pleased about that. Position that centrally. Chuck that away. And then the buttercream, I'm just going to put a blob of buttercream on the top in between that layer. Now to spread this out, you can either use a palette knife, which looks something like that. Well, that looks exactly like that because that is a palette knife. So that's if you were using it to decorate around the outsides of the cake. I'm not, I'm just going to put this in the middle in between the layers. So I might use that for the ganache later on. I've also got like a big square metal sheet that I can put on the turntable and use it to smooth everything down. If you don't want this sticking to the knife, and just to make it easier, I've boiled the kettle. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pour hot water into the kettle and stand my knife in it. Just let me get that off there, just to heat the blade of the knife so that it's easier for me to spread the buttercream around in between the layers. You can't see that well there, can you see that properly? You know, there's all this space here for you, see, I'm concentrating on this flat little bit here. So I'm sorry if I can angle this forward a little bit, then I know, well, is that a little bit better? Can you see that a little bit better? Hopefully. Right, so I've got my tissue, so I'll just clean that off and then spread that around. I might fast forward through this because it looks pretty boring, and at this stage it doesn't have to be perfect. Because I've got a little bit of a dome on my cake, I want more buttercream around the edges, sort of to fill up the edges of the cake so that the sponges sit squarely on top of one another. But I can add pipe bits of buttercream into the gaps later on. And I'll show you how to do that as well. We'll be doing a bit of piping. Right, in between my layers of cake, I want to add some crunchy bits, because I just think adding a little bit of texture at this stage is really, really nice. So I'm just going to swap that around there, and then you can see this. I've got some crunchy bars. 4 crunchy bars are only £1 at the supermarket, and I'm going to use 3. So I'm going to use in between each layer. So I've got 4 cakes, 3 layers of buttercream, if you get what I mean. So open this up, take a knife, and I'm just going to chop this up. It doesn't have to be exact, you just want pieces in between each layer. So I'm trying to get them small-ish, but to be honest, the crunchier the better. And then just, where's my cake? there. Just sprinkle the bits. In between. Like that. Need another bit of touch and roll. And then I'm just spreading those out to make it a little bit more crunchy and add a little bit of texture before I put the next layer of sponge on. Okay, next layer of sponge going on. If you've done one cake, you need to make sure that you can split. That's equal all the way around. Yep, squash that down. Need to be able to make sure you can split it equally, but if you cut it, I mean, there are things that you can get. Dunelm Mill is really good in their kitchen bit for getting things that you can cut through layers. Just I'll get one and I'll show you. I've got it here. So this is the gadget. Can you see it's got a very thin piece of serrated wire there, and it's got little different measures on the side here, so I can use that to, can you see there? It's got measures on both sides, so you can raise it depending on where you want to put the cut. So you put that and you can slice your cake like that. It's quite a handy little thing, but because I've done them in separate tins, it's up to you. And you can just do it with a knife, just by eye, and it doesn't matter whether you cut it 1K, just fill it with buttercream. The top of the cake will be exactly the same, and you won't see that when you slice the cake up, that it's, you know, it's gone down. If you've cut it on an angle, it's not really going to matter, as long as you get the angle right when you put the top layer on the bottom layer. Do you get what I mean? I hope you do. It's not confusing at all, this, in any way, is it? Right, I'm going to shut up now, and I'm going to put the other layers on exactly the same way as I did this. So I'll video it, and then I'll speed up the entire process so you can see exactly what I'm doing each time. So I've put the cake now on a turntable just to make it easier for me. I got this from IKEA. It's just a really easy turntable. I've already done the top layer. What I've done is I've just got the leftover buttercream, and I'm just going round filling in the gaps where there are massive gaps in between each layer. Just so that when I do put the ganache on top, it ends up being quite smooth and I don't waste any of the ganache. The top layer I needed quite a bit. There's a little bit in the bottom layer there. It looks like I might have to make a little bit more buttercream for the decoration on top. So can you see there, I'm just sort of easing the buttercream into the gaps in the tiers of the cake. Just to fill in any gaps at all the way around. It doesn't have to be dead smooth at this stage because the ganache layer is going on the top. And it'll all get smoothed down. Anyway, you can see a little bit of crunchy there. So that's all going in, and looking at it, it's got quite a nice little mound on it, but it's not. I'm just sort of going around, smoothing those little bits and pieces down. Doesn't have to be perfect at this stage. run out of buttercream anyway. So anything else I do, I'll have to do with the ganache. So, speaking of which, I have had a look at the ganache and it was quite solid. So it is quite solid. So I'm just sort of mixed it up a little bit with just with a spoon. It's not of a pourable consistency, but it is spreadable. So again, I'm going to need to, when I put this on, I want to be able to spread it rather than pour it. So, but I do want it to be a lot thinner. So I'm just sort of mixing it around, getting it a little bit more pliable than it was just in a solid mass, just a little bit more workable. And I'll do the same thing again, boil the kettle and have my knife nice and warm so that I can smooth it around. So just bear with. Okay, kettle's boiled and I've put the boiling water in there. Stand the knife up in it. I may use the palette knife on this one, I'll see. So just dollop a big chunk of chocolate on the top. Okay, and then smooth that down. Yeah, knife is nice and hot, it'll smooth down really quickly. And the turntable definitely helps just getting it all even. So get the next bit and I'm going to just try and smooth a little bit on the outside. Now there is an art to this and I'm not saying that I've got it at all because I haven't by any means. And I think professional bakers pipe this around the edges, whereas I'm just trying to get it to stick. I'm just doing it at the top for now because it naturally wants to fall down. Hope you can see what I'm doing there. So it's easier to smooth it down than it is up, if you see what I mean. Right. A little bit more. I'm trying to do this so that you can see it, but it's difficult because I'm left-handed. I should have the camera on the opposite side, really. You can see what I'm doing. Just working my way around slowly. Right. And get the last lot of ganache out of this. And then once this is finished, we're on to the proper decorating stages. So smooth a little bit of that onto there. Oh my God, I'm trying to do it right-handed now so you can see what I'm doing. This could look completely disastrous. A little bit there. There's a little bit needed there. And there's a bit more needed along the edges on the top because they're not gone right the way round with my... Right. Right, bear with. I find it much easier controlling this with a knife than I do with this metal board. But I'm not too concerned about it going right down to the base near the board, because I'm just going to do a few swirls of buttercream on that. And a few scrape marks, I think, just add to the homemade look of it. If you want it perfect, then give it a go. It doesn't have to be perfect on top because you're covering it with all sorts of layers, but if you want it perfect along the sides, I'll try and show you now what effect. And I hope I've put enough ganache on the sides. I'm scraping every little bit out because the more ganache that is on the sides, the better for this, for me. Right. Let's give this a try. So you try and put that on the edge of the board. And it does give it a more smooth along the side. You can see that from the window. So that's in the way. So you can see that's a lot smoother along the side there. Okay. I'll get all my chocolate bits together and then we can decorate. Yay! Right, I've had to make some more buttercream because I didn't have enough, and if I want to decorate the cake properly, I need the buttercream to set the chocolate onto. So I've got everything together that I need. To decorate the top, I'm using all sorts of chocolate. I've got this from Marks and Spencer's, which is just lovely to provide a little bit of height and texture as well to the chocolate. It's Marks and Spencer's chocolate and caramel pretzel slab, but you can get artisan slabs from anywhere. There's a chocolate cafe in Ramsbottom that do them. I'm sure you can get those. I've got a couple of Twirls. I've got Kinder Bueno, mint Aero, orange Aero. I've got some white chocolate drops, some white chocolate buttons, some milk chocolate buttons. I've got some Malteser buttons as well, a double decker if I need it. I don't need that, but all sorts of bits to throw on the top of and my Crunchie as well, because I've got the layers of Crunchie inside. So the first thing I'm going to do is pipe around the bottom and then just pipe little rosettes on the top, so that I've got something to stick the chocolate into, really, because I can just, you know, put them on that, but it won't stick onto the sides. The harder the ganache goes, the buttercream is much better for it to, for the chocolate to sit into. So I'm just going to set my, the end of my piping bag, which is that little thing, into my piping nozzle, into my piping bag. So I'm just going to cut that much off. Might be too much, so I've got another piping bag at the ready. Might be too much, might be not. That's just enough. So it just sits in the end of the piping bag there, and the piping bag doesn't get in the way of the thing. So fold that back on itself as much as you can over your hand. So you've got a little hole there to be able to spoon the buttercream into. So just try and feed it into that hole. This is hard. I need an extra pair of hands. So try and get the top of that and squeeze it down into the... You need to cut open the bottom of the piping bag before you try and squeeze the mixture down into it, because if you've got a pocket of air inside, Imogen did this the other week, it wasn't squeezing down the bag because she'd not cut the end off, and the pocket of air had nowhere to go and the bag exploded in the end. So it just makes sense to me doing it like that, and then just keep squeezing until you can see the chocolate coming out on the end. Right, so move that out of the way. I've only got one shot at this, so I'm hoping it's going to work all right. If it doesn't, it's going to be a disaster. Right, so let's see. It's not as soft as I would like, and it's oozing down the sides of the piping thing, but I'm just going to persevere. Hope that the heat from my hands will be enough. That's all the way around, and then I need a rosette in the middle, and then I want some rosettes. Excuse me, I've got an itchy nose. All the buttercream that I've got, so I'm just going to snip that off. It's a disposable piping bag, but the nozzle isn't, so I wash the nozzle, throw the bag away. Won't be a second. Right, back. So the Malteser buttons, empty those out, and you can see these here. So I might just, I set them on edge last time. I don't know whether you can see that. So there it is, everybody. Finished cake. I hope that's been informative for everybody. It looks spectacular to me. I hope you found the the ingredient, well, the tutorial, easy to follow. I've not used a lot of each piece of chocolate bit on top at all, but I've used quite a bit. So we'll give that a slice in a second and you can see what it's like inside. Okay. The trouble with cakes like this is you just don't know where to start when you're cutting them, do you? So I'm gonna have to take some stuff off the top to cut it open, because I just don't think there's any clear run. Oh, hang on a minute. There might be a little bit of a clear run there without me taking too much off. So slicing down into the middle of the cake, and I'm gonna have to take that off. So, and that. So just so that I can get a slice out to show you. Oh, it's moved off the turntable. Right. So that's the 4 tiers inside. God, that's a relief. I can't tell you what a relief that is, that it looks okay. Ooh. Right. And then pop that on there. And then that's the inside of the cake. And then taste test. Put that on there. So that's the cake itself. Can you see the bits of Crunchie in the buttercream there? So I'm going to have a little bit of the sponge and the that's so nice. The cake's so moist. Yes, I said it again. The cake's so moist. I like the cake when I use the oil. It doesn't change the flavour at all. It's still really nice. I get the crunchiness of the crunchy pieces in with the buttercream as well. And the chocolate ganache on the outside. That's not too sweet because I've made it with dark chocolate. I think when you make it with milk chocolate, it's a bit insipid. White chocolate is very, very sweet, but the dark chocolate is really nice. And it does balance out. Don't get me wrong, that is a massive slab of cake, and there's no way I'm going to get through that in one sitting. Well, I might do. Not have any tea. But yeah, I'm really pleased with that. So, best of luck. I hope it's just as much of a success. I really hope you give it a go. If you just want to experiment doing 2 layers with it, then that's fine. Just make sure you've got all of your... It does... When I first started off, I just thought, oh my God, that's just so overwhelming. There's absolutely no way I'm going to be able to do that. But you can. You really can. Just take each stage one at a time, each element as it comes, get everything prepared, and you'll be fine. And the more you do, the easier it'll be. Best of luck.